So before I can even continue to my normal calibration and lock, I have to double reset. And it will check everything all over again, and if it passes, I can
Then we
now
go
move
home.
into my home.
If something was still off, then it would give you a warning.
Another error,
Another
yes.
warning, like, all right,
If it was
second bar was
something
off.
else or
If
something.
there were 2 bars
Well,
off and you only moved
ideally,
one.
the bar will go away when this light goes away. Once you found it,
Yeah.
that signal should go away.
All right. But at this
So
point,
sometimes
you still.
they're like just barely off, and you're like,
blinking up top.
"What's going up?" Yeah, that's the other thing I haven't got that part
There's
yet.
no noise.
No. But I mean, sometimes they're like, I was working in here and it's just like a little off, and I didn't notice it. So sometimes it's best to just like open and close.
Make sure they're
Open
fully
and
square.
close. Feel that it's locked in place, so that way you know that that one's taken care of.
Yeah.
Because sometimes just visually looking at it, you can't tell. I've had that happen before. I'm like, which one is it? And I physically have to go open, close, and then I find it pretty
Yeah.
quickly. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell you like which head it would be. That would be
Yeah.
kind of nice. But it's just a trigger
Series
switch. You're
3.
just breaking it and opening it. You'd have to get a lot fancier switches to do that.
All right.
So once it's on, I can do the lock and start printing again. Ideally, if I want to use my flash, I should turn it on before turning my press on so that everything can talk nicely. In my 5 years of setting up presses, I've done it a million times. I've never had a problem, but it is
Yeah.
something the engineers do tell you to do. So if you are having a problem with your flash and starting it up after the fact, try to shut everything down and start it up again. Hopefully that should fix your problem, but like I said,
So wait, so we're in the process
I've
of the
never-
turn-on system? Do you turn on the flash?
the flash is over here.
Well, yeah.
on the
Yeah, I know it's a separate power.
Yeah, that's all I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Ideally, you should turn this on before turning the press on.
All right, so that
So
should be
you
before
turn
anything.
Your red switches on at
Got
the
it,
same
that-
time. Then the
That
press.
should come first. Okay. Which we didn't do now.
Correct. That's why I was saying
Okay.
I didn't do it. I pretty much almost never do it, but the engineers say that you should do it. So if you are having a problem,
Yeah.
I told you so.
Yeah, got it. All right, okay.
That's all I'm saying.
So how did you turn? You just
That
This is
big
the
red
big power
switch.
switch. The big power switch on the end. The 3 switches are the zones. We can actually use the front zone, or front zone, middle zone, back zone. And if we're only doing a heart logo, we only need to use, say, the middle zone.
We're getting to that.
Yeah, we don't need. Yeah, we don't need the flash the entire
stay on
shirt.
track then.
We can just hit the spot.
Not a left chest or
Yeah.
left crest.
Well, we say left chest usually, but
Yeah.
every now and then
Yeah.
logo.
As Chris likes to write on her paperwork, 4C.
Yeah.
Because the L/C turns into a 4.
Yeah.
So like you said, you got your signal lights up here. These are made for looking at it from like across the press. So if I was like over there, I could easily look and see what's going on with my press. Green light means I'm good to go, ready to print. Red light means there's an error or some kind of problem and I need to come look at my screen here. And then flashing back and forth means to check your safety bars before coming back.
Okay. All right. I almost came back last night and printed.
Yeah.
Setup menu. You've got 2 passwords, 997. This is going to be your main setup menu. Some of this stuff in here you probably don't want to touch. I have to go over all of it for you.
Okay.
This is the number of heads your machine has. You probably don't need to touch this. This is warning time. This is that beep you hear before it indexes. It's set for the OSHA minimum standard of half a second, so it's just 1 beep, half a second before it takes off. I could turn that up all the way up to 5 seconds. It's going to beep more. It could take longer to make its first movement. That's up to you. I typically don't recommend changing that. This has to do with the type of screw inside the indexer. You should not touch this. This
Okay.
is a standard for this size machine.
Got
That
it.
changes sometimes for larger machines. This is distance offset, so this tells the indexer the distance to travel from one location to the
All right.
next.
Yes. Yeah.
So you should not need to touch this unless you need to make an adjustment to that. This is home offset. This is telling the indexer where to find its home position at, so lining up that first bearing with the forks.
All right.
These are accelerations and decelerations, so how fast that motor takes off from its initial movement and how fast it stops. And these are maximum speeds, so how fast it gets up to in both directions. This is a lift-up delay. We typically don't use this in our electric presses. It can cause random registration issues and stuff like that if you do. Because it's got to do with the timing of the squeegees coming down and the pallets coming up. If you start changing the delay of the lift, it may come up after the pallets come down, which could stretch the mesh in different directions, different times. Sometimes you may get a great print and then randomly all of a sudden, why is this pallet off? Typically we don't recommend touching that for that reason. It took us a while to figure that one out. It's mostly used for our air machines, but we have an additional delay inside of our heads on the air machines to compensate for that. This is to change your background, button style, and languages. Languages.
English and Polish, huh?
Pretty much.
All right, good.
I believe it lists Spanish in there, but it doesn't work. May list other things in there. It probably doesn't work.
That's totally racist.
Polish works. English works.
Spanish people don't work.
I know.
That's what he said.
Calibrating the touchscreen if you need to is right here. It'll have you go through a sequence of X's. It's kind of a pain in the butt. So if you don't
Make sure
need
the
to
screen's
do it,
lined up. Yeah.
If you don't need to do it, I don't recommend doing it.
Alright.
If it's so bad that you can't even get in here to calibrate, you can always bring your monitor over to the load unload station, open it up. There's USB mouses. You can plug a USB mouse inside and navigate your way into here via that.
Okay.
Even if something were to happen and the touch calibration goes out, like I can't touch anything, you could always plug a USB mouse in to get you through until you replaced or whatever you chose to do at that point.
Theoretically, you could put a wireless mouse on it and then actually do it from over here, if you had to.
Yeah. Or usually most people that do it use a wireless mouse and just do it right on the pallet.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah, you could do it from wherever.
Yeah.
This is the switch between step back or cycle mode. So right now it's in step back mode. If I click it, it'll go to cycle mode. Step back mode is for the print flash type thing. And it actually works with multiple flashes. So if you ever get another flash someday, you can actually do double step back, stuff like
Okay.
that. Cycle mode gives me an extra button up here, lets me pre-program up to 8 times around. The video for your cycle mode is going to be on my YouTube page.
Yes.
The one that's on our YouTube page is for
Yeah.
the newer version.
Now, in this case, for you guys, it's always in either cycle or step back.
Yeah.
Whether we decide to use the step back is another thing, but it's always in step back mode.
Yeah.
And we turn that off from the quartz flash.
Correct. I would only go to cycle mode when you're planning on doing multiple rotations around your machine.
Yeah.
If you're only planning on going around once, just use normal mode. If
Yeah.
you're going around more than once, cycle mode. I'll go through that in a minute.
Yep.
This is the last on, last off. So if I want it to stop at 0, turn this on. It'll stop itself at the 0 when it gets to 0.
Okay.
I typically leave that off due to the large margin of error in screen printing. Direction, if I wanted to have it go the opposite direction, is push the button. It's going to ask me to recalibrate. It's going to flip on the screen. I'm going to hit home. It's going to line itself up to the other direction. Then it'll be ready to start going.
As you're just kind of figuring out stuff, you know, like, boy, this order really would have been nice. We set it up one way. It'd be nice to run this out of order or backwards. Theoretically, if your flash isn't in the right spot, you really just could just spin it around and go the opposite direction.
Sure, or you could use cycle mode and have it print whatever it has
Yeah,
in whatever
and cycle
order,
it that
either
way. Yeah.
998 is for your lift up. This one you probably almost never need to get into. This is more for calibration of the press. Again, I have to go through it just to have it. Home offset set to -300. Distance is in correlation to your off context. We don't even really need to worry about that. That's going to change as I start changing off context settings. Again, acceleration, how fast it takes off upward and downward, and maximum speed for upward and downward. These two windows that I just showed you, I highly recommend taking pictures of and saving for your files in case you ever have a computer board failure, computer failure, something like that. Things can happen where, like, you come in the morning and you start it up and all this information's different. What you could do is easily retype all this back in, run your machine, don't turn it off all day. It'll keep running fine all day, but when you turn it off, all of a sudden it's gone again. This would be a sign that the battery is failing and the memory is failing in the board underneath. We could easily replace that board But if you have all this information, instead of trying to go through and recalibrate all this stuff, you could easily type that in and get yourself up and running that day much faster
Right now.
until that
Yeah.
new computer board comes in, and then when that new one comes in, you'll have to retype all this information in again for that board. The only time these numbers should change if something physically changes on the press. So if I start moving proxy sensors, replace motors, mechanically take stuff apart, move stuff around, stuff like that. Other than that, these numbers shouldn't really change.
Let's do that now. I'll do